Reif für die Felseninsel. Moritz, Franzi und Dirk nehmen euch auf der DMF BLEIBEN mit auf eine nostalgische Reise zur Felseninsel. Dort rekapitulieren sie die Abenteuer von Julian, Dick, Anne, George und Timmy, dem Hund, und vergleichen die Hörspiele mit den Serien, Filmen und der Buchvorlage. Nehmt eure Reisetabletten, schnallt die Rettungsweste fest und macht euch bereit für eine neue Episode des ersten deutschsprachigen Fünf-Freunde-Podcasts.
Hallo und herzlich willkommen bei einer neuen Folge von nicht die Couchfesseln, von Reif für die Felseninsel. Und heute haben wir einen ganz besonderen Gast hier. Wir haben letztens sein Buch besprochen und heute ist er bei uns im Studio und steht uns für alle Fragen Rede und Antwort. Natürlich ist auch Moritz wieder dabei. Hi Moritz.
Ja, Moritz ist auch da. Hi. Und ich fürchte, wir müssen mit unserem Gast ausländisch sprechen, denn ich glaube, Englisch würde ihm besser zu Pass kommen als dieses komische Deutsch. Also da müsst ihr durch und Dirk übersetzt im Anschluss alles für euch nochmal ins Deutsche.
Genau.
Und
vielleicht
ins Berlinerische. Okay, Dirk, dann bitte stell den Gast vor.
Ja, wir haben einen Gast. Wir haben schon mal über sein Buch geredet und ich darf ihn willkommen heißen. Welcome, Chris Smith. Hello.
Hallo, tschüss, guten Tag. Es tut mir leid, wir müssen Englisch sprechen. Meine Deutsch ist nicht so gut. Your English is much better.
Yeah, maybe because we learn English in school.
Maybe,
different to you.
Yeah. It's a constant embarrassment to me how bad English people are at languages. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
They're better than my French friends, so don't worry.
Okay.
So Chris, would you like to introduce yourself to the listeners?
Absolutely. Yeah. So hello, everybody. My name is Chris Smith, and I'm an English children's author. Before I was an author, I was a journalist. And before I was a journalist, I was an enormous fan of the Famous Five. So I read the books when I was growing up, and we had, I think, the same TV series that you guys used to enjoy in Germany in the 70s with that incredible theme tune. And it's been my enormous privilege to be able to write a brand new book all about the Famous Five, which is why, the Fünf Freunde, which is why I'm talking to you guys today. Yeah.
You also wrote other books?
Yes. I've written a series of books with a friend of mine from the radio, who's a guy called Greg James, who's a radio presenter here in the UK. So Greg and I have written 8 books together, including a series called Kid Normal, which I think has been translated into Germany and was published over there. And
Yes.
then I've written some solo books as well. I've written some fantasy books because I'm a bit of a nerd and I enjoy The Hobbit and all that kind of stuff. And The Famous Five is my latest project and my biggest love.
But I must ask, maybe you can see some stuff in the background. I'm quite of a role-playing nerd, and when I read, there's some novels, The Door to Parallelia, and there's another book. It sounds a bit like the role-playing world that you and your friends explored years ago, and you wrote some novels there. Is that correct?
That is 100% correct. Yeah. So I loved, I used to play Dungeons and Dragons when I was a kid, and I've always loved, do you guys have the fighting fantasy books?
Yeah, of course.
So I don't know what it's called in Germany, but The Warlock of Firetop Mountain and Death Trap Dungeon and all of those by Steve Jackson and Ian Livingstone. So I love those books so much. So there's actually in the book about Parallelia, there are some references to those fighting fantasy books.
Great.
And obviously being a nerd, I made sure that all the page numbers were absolutely correct. So when he was playing. You got me. You caught me.
And I know that another British thing is the Lone Wolf gaming book series. And I wrote stuff for a German publisher who did the German Lone Wolf. And I had the pleasure to meet Mr. Joe Deaver a few times, and he's such a great guy. And I want to read gaming books from you now. That's your next project after the Famous Five thing.
You know what? That would be amazing. And yeah, Lone Wolf. I used to love Lone Wolf, but it's very niche. I don't think it's very well known here. But yeah, I absolutely loved. I had a compendium, like 3 books in one
Yeah.
of the Lone Wolf adventures. They were fantastic. They deserved to be bigger, I think. Yeah.
Okay, Dirk. Now I've got my fantasy role-playing thing done. It's up to you.
Okay.
Okay, you were telling us that you've been a fan of the Famous Five. We also got the Famous Five in Germany, obviously. How is the fandom in Great Britain? Because it might be way different than the one we have.
Yeah. I mean, I think when I was a kid in the 70s and 80s, the TV series was big, you know. I don't know what how the theme tune went in German, but it was, "We are the famous five."
It's
just
just translated. The melody is the same. I don't know if I can sing it.
Come on. Come on.
No, if I'm allowed to sing it.
Oh, I see. Right, for copyright reasons.
It's so far away from the original. I think you can do it.
No, it's basically just a translated song.
Okay.
And the theme melody is the same. And it's basically the same, just translated.
So the TV series was big. And there's just been a new BBC TV series of the Famous Five released as well. But Enid Blyton has a sort of, she is both kind of loved and not loved in this country. So there's a whole generation like me, and we loved the Famous Five and all the books. But also there were, and I don't know whether this is the same in Germany, some parents consider that Enid Blyton is not really kind of suitable reading material, not because of anything, any of the references, but just because people thought it was like, I guess, what's the best way of describing it? Like junk food for your brain, because it's too easy to read. So I've spoken to a few people in this country whose parents would not let them read Enid Blyton when they were children, just because they thought that it was rubbish, that they should be reading something that was more improving, I guess. Yes, which is really difficult for me because I'm a campaigner for children's literacy, and it's one of the main things that I always say is just let children read whatever they want. The idea of telling a child not to read a book just seems really weird and bad to me. So yeah, there isn't, I mean, Enid Blyton is very loved by a lot of people, but I don't think there's not a huge fandom, I don't think, in this country, which is a shame because, you know, she's a great export and a great Briton from the past. But yeah, she's not spoken about so much, which is surprising. But she still sells a load of books.
I mean, in Germany, we got the audio plays, which is kind of like an audio book with different actors playing the roles. And there's some episodes that have been taken off the market because of the use of language.
Yeah, of course.
For example, Five Have a Wonderful Time, which is translated very differently in German because it's about gypsies in the title. Yeah. It's the gypsy girl.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And therefore, they've taken that off because it's inappropriate language. And there's also the concern that the role of Anne is too gender specific and she's too fixed on being a girl, which I think George poses a very good contrast to.
Well, I mean, first of all, some of the attitude in Enid Blyton, and I spoke to another very popular children's author called Cressida Cowell here about it, who wrote How to Train Your Dragon.
Oh, cool.
And I said I was writing, right? So she's amazing. She's an icon. And I said, like, I'm doing a new Famous Five book. And she said, I hope you're not going to have too many gypsies in it, because obviously Enid Blyton back in the 40s and 50s, the way she obviously thought about and portrayed, you know, people from, as we would now say, people from traveling communities is obviously very, very outdated. Which is really tricky. But I think George and Anne is a really interesting thing. And I always think of George and Anne as kind of two alternative versions of Enid Blyton, because she was really encouraged by her mum to become a very, how do we say, a very girly girl and to cook and clean and be like a good little Anne. But she never wanted to do that. And Enid Blyton was much more forward-thinking, I think, and didn't want to kind of conform to that role. She was well known at school for cutting her hair very short, which was very unusual back in those days. And there's a word that we used to have, I don't know whether you know this word in German, the word tomboy.
Yes.
Are you aware of that? Yeah, okay. So a tomboy is what people used to call like a girl who they would regard as sort of behaving like a boy. So that's what Enid Blyton was very much like. So I always think Anne is the character that Enid refused to become, and which is why she sometimes writes about her, I think, in a slightly kind of scornful way. And George is absolutely her as she was, which I think why George always, feels like a very kind of beloved and looked after character in the books. So I kind of, I love George and she's my favorite, but I always felt kind of sorry for Anne. She got a raw deal. She just had to make the picnics and make up the heather beds and stuff, and it was always a pity, which is why I'm giving Anne a bit more of a prominent role in my books.
I can defend Enid Blyton a bit from the German point of view, because I read the stuff in the 70s and 80s and listened to the audio dramas, audio plays, and my parents were teachers. But for them, Enid Blyton was okay because, number one, she was from Great Britain, so that's better than if she had been from Germany. That's okay. And we have an author here, Stefan Wolf, who wrote another series of children detective stories, TKKG, and he was so terrible. He was so I don't know, racist and all this stuff, and the hero sexist. The hero managed to get everything out of the way by hitting other people, and so
he did judo and karate.
Oh wow! Okay.
Compared to Stefan Wolf, Enid Blyton was great and fighter for everybody's rights.
Wow, okay, I love that.
So
way more peaceful, yeah.
Yeah, and here in Germany, Famous Five, Fünf Freunde, was a great thing, end of the 70s and the beginning of the 80s.
Okay, well that's fascinating to hear. Yeah, that's amazing. I'll have to seek out what's his guy, Stefan
Wolf. Yeah,
I'll have to take a look at that.
I don't know if they got translated in any way.
I hope not.
I haven't seen them in English. No, not as far as I'm aware. No.
Maybe Polish or something like that.
Yeah, maybe.
Russian.
I'm going to do some research. If I find a book, I'll let you. I get you the book.
Yeah, so report back. Okay, yeah.
That's for a future episode.
I can translate a chapter for you, so you know what it's about.
But it has very strange lines saying, like, Gabi, who is a 13-year-old girl, she was well grown for her age.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so that definitely needs a health warning, like a trigger warning at the beginning these days. Yeah,
there's like old people hitting on her and like,
oh my
hey,
goodness,
come in. I even give you some pocket money.
So Enid Blyton is a pussycat compared to this, right?
Yeah, it's very, very peaceful and very harmonic.
Yeah.
Talking about TKKG, do you know the three investigators?
No, I don't. No, tell me.
Oh my God. Because the Famous Five, the TKKG, and the three investigators, they're like the trinity of audio plays in Germany, which we grew up with.
Okay.
These are like three series that are from the end of the 70s. That's when it started. And all three series still exist till now.
Okay, and they're still popular. People still listening to them.
They are still active. There are new episodes every 2 or 3 months for all three of the...
That's amazing. And made as an audio play, which is wonderful because I'm a radio guy. So, most of my job was working in radio. And I've always loved radio comedy, radio plays, and audio books. I guess now with podcasts being so big, it's all coming back around again. But I'm so gratified to hear that, really good quality audio plays are still being made because I think it's such a great format.
Yeah, don't you have that in England?
Not so much. I mean, we have the BBC does some quite good radio plays for grown-ups, but not really. It's not made for children, which is such a shame, I think, because, audio books, sure, but really good quality sort of audio plays for kids doesn't seem to be done very much. So maybe we need to bring it back. Maybe we need to translate the three investigators.
Yeah, that would be
cool.
Cool.
They're dead in America because that's the similarity I see. This whole franchise is non-existent in America.
Right.
They started in the mid 60s, and I think in the 80s, they kind of shut it down after they got kind of beaten by another book series, which was called the Hardy.
The Hardy Boys.
The Hardy Boys. Did you know the Hardy Boys? Yeah.
Yeah, the Hardy Boys we had here. Yeah, it's not so big now, but it was. I remember my big brother reading the Hardy Boys in the 80s. Yeah.
There weren't too many books of the three investigators, and the Germans had the audio plays. And when the production in America ended, well, they bought the rights, and now we have own books. That's just like, I think more than 180 German books exist.
Wow.
Compared to a little less than 80 American books.
So the three investigators are now even older than the Famous Five were at the end of 21 stories.
Yeah, and that's a question I wanted to ask you. First, the information for you. Here in Germany, we have tapes You know, these small plastic thingies you put into
A cassette. Yeah,
cassette
absolutely.
recorder.
Yeah.
We can buy all these audio dramas on cassette. So I've got them in my wardrobe, on my shelves. What do you think? How many German audio plays of the famous five exist? How
Oh
many
my goodness.
episodes do we have?
Well, I mean, you've obviously got there's the 21 original books.
Yeah, we have the 21.
And I know there have been some other continuation stories. I know in France there were some additional books written by the French.
I wanted to ask you about him. Yeah.
Yeah. But wow, I don't know. So presumably more than 21. Are we going into the hundreds?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Wow. Okay, you're gonna have to tell me.
It's 165.
Wow, that is amazing. But isn't that wonderful? I love, hearing from people like you guys and just, thinking to myself, there's so much in these stories that has lasted. And it's these characters, they still really live in people's hearts. And it's just so wonderful.
Yes. Yeah, this Claude Voilier, he wrote like 24 books.
That's right. Yeah.
8 of them have been transferred to the audio plays.
Okay.
And after that, they started to write German books under license. That only went till episode 70.
Okay.
So they kind of doubled the output. And after that, there's only the scripts for the audio plays coming out.
Yeah.
So basically just without any book.
That's really interesting because the French books, I think 1 or 2 of them were translated back into English, but I don't think were particularly successful in this country. And so, the famous five in English in its home country, it only really exists as those 21 books. There haven't really been before this, any kind of continuation, that not one that's made a big impact of the famous five stories. So it's amazing that sort of in France, in Germany, other places around the world, it's had this extra life. There have been more stories about the five. Whereas in the UK, we kind of just got stuck with the originals, all gradually sort of sitting on the shelf and becoming older and older and older. But never really until now has there been any, like, it's kind of a serious attempt to bring them a little bit more, a bit more up to date, or to get some new kids reading them,
Maybe we should change that.
I think we should.
And bring the audio plays to England.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it'd be amazing. Yeah.
You already told us that George is your favorite character. I gotta admit, mine too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it all depends. In the audio plays, he's always like, I'm gonna call Timmy. He's my dog, at least.
Okay.
I don't know if that's original tone.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, but I really like her because she's an adventurous character.
And she's the most interesting person. All the others are kind of cliche, I think.
I think that's right. I think she's the most three-dimensional character in the whole book. And I think that's because Enid Blyton based her so much on herself. Yeah. Definitely, for sure. So yeah, George was the character that I really wanted to bring back and to sort of talk about first, because my book is, for people that haven't read it, it's set partly 55 years after the famous five stories took place. So some new kids turn up in Kieran Village, and they run into a grumpy old professor, which of course is George, who is now very grown up. And I was particularly struck by a passage in one of the stories where Uncle Quentin, who is probably my second favorite character, who is the sort of very grumpy old dad of George in the stories, he butts heads with George a lot, right? They argue with each other. She's a very difficult child. But there's one point, I think it's in one of the earliest books, and I'll have to look it back up, but Uncle Quentin we get a little glimpse inside his head, and he looks at George and he says to himself, I remember that I was like that when I was a kid. And he remembers being a difficult child himself. And I thought that was a very nice insight into the sort of the dynamic between the father and the daughter. So I thought, well, what would George be like when she grows up? Well, of course, she will turn into her dad. She'll be a brilliant scientist, but she will also be very solitary and rather grumpy. So that's what I've made her into. I've made her into kind of modern day Uncle Quentin, carrying on his research.
Do you have a favorite book, or we call it episode, but in your case, it would be a book.
Yeah.
Episode in the TV series, because there's also a lot of material.
Yes. So my favorite book or episode is 5 on Kieran Island Again, because it got plenty of Uncle Quentin in it and plenty of George. The one where Uncle Quentin has built a tower to do his experiments on Kieran Island. And they have to sort of send Timmy off to protect him. And it's got all my sort of favorite famous five things. It's got plenty of Uncle Quentin, scientific experiments, secret passages.
The tunnel.
The tunnel, I love the
Right.
tunnels, right? Yeah, absolutely. That was always my favorite bit. I was just fascinated by that, which is why I've made sure there's plenty of tunnels in any famous five book I will ever write. There will be an underground passageway.
By the way, Karen Ireland has translated in all the German books and audio plays. It's just Felseninsel, so Rocky Island, and
Just Rocky Island. Okay.
that's our title. It's Reif für die Felseninsel, which means, man, I'm tired with the world. Take me to Rocky Island. Take me to Karen Island now.
You know what? I think we all feel like that. That sounds like a good motto. I'm tired of the world. Just take me to a rocky island. That's what the famous five is good for, right? It does take you to a rocky island, or takes you to the countryside,
Yeah.
takes you to the hills or the moorlands, away from everybody. That's what I still love about it, is this adventurous outdoor life, with boats and islands and beaches, seashores and forests and lakes.
Yeah.
It's the kind of lifestyle I really like, and I want to sort of bring that to kids today who don't get very much of that stuff. So yeah, take me to a rocky island, please.
Yeah, we wanted to address the nostalgia people have with these audio plays because they grew up with them. So we kind of wanted to address them direct in the title and just give a little lifestyle, or yeah, you understand what I'm saying.
I know what you're saying. Yeah.
There's been 2 TV series, one from the 70s, one from the 90s. Which one do you prefer?
Oh, the 70s all the way. Yeah. I used to play that with my friends. So when I would have friends round to play at my house, we would go in the garden and we would pretend to be the famous five from the TV series. We would sing the theme song, and we would all, I think actually, the boys would all fight over who got to be Julian, and then the girls would all fight over who got to be George. Yeah. And, my dog would obviously have to be Timmy, because that's typecasting, right? But yeah, that 70s TV series I thought was really wonderful. Shot on sort of beautiful locations in the countryside, and it's really kind of stayed very fresh in my memory. The 90s one was before my son was born in 2007. So the 90s I was sort of probably too busy, I guess, going to the pub to be watching the famous five. So that series kind of passed me by. So it's the 70s all the way for me. I think that's iconic.
Whenever we are talking about an episode, I also compare the TV series, like both with the audio play. Moritz reads the book. So
Right.
we can kind of like compare all the media. Do you know that there's comic books?
Well, yeah, there have been a couple of comic books of it in the UK, which actually did quite well, because comic books are having such a big resurgence at the moment. I think partly after the pandemic, some kids are finding it difficult to read. They're getting intimidated by a long book. I don't know whether this is the same in Germany, but here, kids' books are just getting thinner and thinner. They're getting a bit smaller because kids are struggling to read for enjoyment so much. And I think comic books is actually a really good way around that. I enjoy a really good graphic novel. And the famous five, I think, lends itself to that so wonderfully, doesn't it? Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, they're pretty nice. Sooner or later, we get to the episodes where there's a comic book.
Right. Yeah. You'll have to have more comparing. So yeah, Moritz has more reading to do then.
Yeah. No,
Same as the TV series, the whole chronology of this book series has been totally overthrown. And in the audio plays, it has been topped even more.
Yes.
Because there have been the first 4 have been produced by another company. When they started their series, they said, we're not going to start with the 4 that have been published already, just not to annoy people. And also the rights were still with the other company.
Of course, right.
So they mixed that up totally. So every famous 5 series that I see has a different
timeline, a different chronology. Yeah, but I think that's if you try to work out the famous 5 timeline too carefully, I think you go mad, because it's very difficult. As I'm sure you know, there were only supposed to be 6 books when Enid Blyton intended to write 6 books about the famous 5. So the first 6 sort of end quite nicely, and then they became popular, and she wrote another 6. And then people were like, no, we want more and more. So sort of like Sherlock Holmes, she was forced to keep bringing them back. So, 21 books and 9 summer holidays later, we end up with, I'm told it's called a floating timeline. So
Yes.
they're
Because
just
it's always the beginning of the
yeah,
holiday.
right. It's always, but you know that's what's great about the Famous Five, isn't it? It's always the school holidays, and the kids are always the same age, and there's always picnics, and there's always grumpy Uncle Quentin, and there's always brave Timmy the dog, and nothing ever changes. But I mean, why it was so difficult to think about writing them as grown-ups, because 55 years later, you know, I'm presented with the terrible problem that although Julian, Dick, and Anne and George can be very much still alive and still enjoying their lives, but sadly, poor old Timmy is not with us anymore. So
Yeah, that really was a downer for me
I
reading
mean,
in the
tell me
book.
about it. Tell me about it. Imagine what it was like to write. Yeah, it was
Oh, yeah.
very sad. Yeah.
And because you can't do the goldfish thing and just buy a new one and put it
You're right.
in the bowl.
Yeah, that's the
hard
thing.
with
So
dogs.
I decided George, being so strong-willed, you know, she would never want another dog after
That
Timmy.
was
So I decided-
the first mystery to me in your book, because after a few seconds, of course, I knew that the professor was George. But
Sure.
then I heard that the professor hates dogs. And that was the first thing that puzzled me. And that was interesting. Good job.
Yeah, I decided that she would be thunderstruck by losing Timmy and would not kind of want Gilbert, the new dog in the house. I mean, just because it would be too painful for her, I guess. It's just too raw, because George is a character, I think, who feels things very deeply. And when she felt like a very underappreciated child with the sort of fairly remote dad, Timmy was her best friend, right? And it's very hard to lose your best friend. And you don't immediately go, well, I'll just get a new best friend. You know, it takes a while. So I think, you know, she goes on a little bit of a journey in this book without wanting to spoil it for anybody. And things are able to change slightly, which I was very pleased to be able to do for her.
It's hard for us not to spoil things because we
Right.
are the spoiler kings in our normal episodes.
Well, I mean, we can just spoil it if you want.
We talked about the book like 2 months ago, and we only talked about the intro.
Right.
We wanted other people to really enjoy the book, because I think the twists that are in the book are so interesting that they deserve not to be spoiled.
Well, thank you so much. Well, I was very worried that, you know, because there are people everywhere that love the Famous Five. There are people here, there are people in Germany, there are people in India, there are people in Australia, New Zealand. Like, sort of, it's really wonderful how big it is around the world, but it is also a very scary thing to be given that kind of responsibility to bring them back. You know, even worse, to say the new Famous Five, and we're like, who are these new kids? Like, how dare you?
Mm-hmm.
When my publishers posted the cover of the book online, there were a couple of people, you know, as I would expect, you know, who just commented beneath it going like, no. And someone just put like, this looks terrible. And I just think, which I understand, right? I understand it's a very beloved thing. But I hope that when people read it, and I'm so glad to hear that this was the case with you guys, I hope that when people read it, they'll realize that it's done with a great deal of love and care and attention to detail. And I'm not trying to kind of spoil the original Famous Five. I'm just trying to celebrate them, I guess.
To caress them, yeah. When my friend saw the cover of the book, she was like, is that a comic book?
Yeah, right.
The cover is made to be appealing to younger kids, and
Yes.
they need that. So I'm like, yeah, but don't look just at the cover. Look into the book. That is...
Never judge a book by its cover, right?
Yes. I mean, Moritz came up with a book. He recommended it. Next day, I bought it. To me, my next or my actual reading project is the Sherlock Holmes Chronicles.
Wow, okay, yeah.
It's like a 900-page book.
Yes, there's a lot of them.
It's very demotivating for someone who hasn't read in a while.
Yeah.
To grab a 1,000-page book that is so overwhelming. And then this book came in. It took me like a couple of days to read it. And ever since, I'm back into reading.
Oh, well, that's the nicest thing you could possibly have said to me. That's absolutely wonderful. I've prepared you for Sherlock Holmes. That's incredible. What a treat you've got in store for you there. My goodness, those stories are amazing.
I've got a question concerning the illustrations, because
Sure.
as I said, I'm into role-playing stuff. I publish role-playing adventures and source material, and it's always interesting how to interact, how to work with the persons who do the illustrations, because even my stickmen are terrible. So I can do a quick sketch so that the artist knows, that's how it's supposed to look. So I have to describe it. I need a picture. You need this element. Blah, blah, blah. How do you do it? How do you work with James Lancet, who did the illustrations?
Yeah, I'm also a very bad artist. I love drawing, but I'm not very good at it. So when I'm writing stories, I will usually draw the characters, but very poor versions of them.
Okay.
But just to help get them sort of clear in my mind. So absolutely the same as you, Moritz. I just describe them. But I think Enid Blyton once said, when she was describing her writing process, she said, I just close my eyes and the characters are all there as if they're ready to begin a play. And she had that skill to see her characters very, very clearly, which I sort of try and do the same thing. I try and really see them in my head and can describe them. And, James was very excited to get the gig, to be able to do the famous five. I think he did a fantastic job, actually. And there was very little that I had to go back and get him to change. The main thing I got him to change is on page 6, where there's a picture of the new five in Kieran Village. And there's a cat on the roof. And the only thing I did was send him pictures of my cat to make sure that's my actual cat, Mabel.
So your cat has a cameo in your book.
She has a cameo, nice. Right? Yeah. So she gets to be famous cat. So that's the only illustration that we really had to have any back and forth on. But I think the famous five kind of lives in our collective unconscious in this country. So I think, hopefully to be asked to draw the famous five was a big privilege for him and a big thrill. I love some of his pictures. I mean, I think the one towards the end with the diver, when Raymond is diving for the treasure, is just so beautiful because it's quite sparse. He's allowed, left a big expanse of kind of underwater, just blank in the page, and just the little boat. Mm-hmm. I think it's a wonderful piece of art. Yeah, it's the first time I've worked with James, and I think he's really outstanding. Yeah.
We have another podcast, and one of our podcasters' husband, he's a comic book artist.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you can see it.
Oh, yeah.
This is the logo.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And the guy in the middle is Dirk, but in reality is much smaller.
Okay.
we also got like a...
Oh, I can see a little dog. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so what cool. He added. The other one is Francie. She's our third podcaster.
Right.
He takes these characters and puts them into the original cover illustrations.
Oh, that's very cool.
And transforms them. So I don't have that much work.
Yeah.
Okay. with creating the covers, because he has the original cover. He does that, and I can trust on him. He knows when they're coming out, and I don't have to panic when it's 2 days before release, because I know he's going to deliver, and he's having fun doing that.
He's a safe pair of hands, as we would say.
Yeah, and who does not enjoy being a cartoon character?
I mean, right? Yeah. That's the ultimate privilege. I need to get James to draw me next, don't I? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be a little tolerant about your... Yeah, all in all, he did a great job, and we really enjoy that. This is one of the coolest things, because now you can do merch stuff.
Right, you can be on a t-shirt.
Yeah, actually, we're going to have t-shirts, because in 3 weeks, there's going to be a convention that we attend as an exhibitor.
Yeah.
So that's when we three at least meet again, because we're living spread over the country. So
yeah, the dive finder. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
So we specially made t-shirts.
Cool.
Come on, let's ask some questions, Dirk. Don't talk too much about ourselves. I've got a short question. I don't know, you don't have to answer it, but of course we have George. And we don't want to spoil the end, but in the final scene, George shows the kids a woman who's very important to her. And my brain was, her wife, her girlfriend, come on. Spoiler, it's not her wife. It's somebody else that you might know. But could you have written something like that into the book? Or would the publisher have said, let's not be too queer, come on?
No, I think I could have done. I guess the way I wanted to treat it was to not make George's gender or her sexuality the main thing about her, I guess. Because I think it is something that people often ask about and often think about. Was she was she very ahead of her time in that way? The way that George sort of denied her kind of, didn't want the gender identity of the 40s or 50s. And so I thought about what I would do with that. But I guess the conclusion I came to in the end was that I was writing an adventure story for children, and I wanted to keep it as an adventure story for children. And I think the best way of leaving it is that we can all have our own version of George in our heads. and in our hearts, and we can know in our heads and our hearts, what lifestyle we think George is living, and we hope she's very happy and fulfilled. But I didn't think in just an adventure story for kids, it didn't feel like my place to kind of put that in there. I think it's very difficult to do because whichever way I went with that plot line, I would annoy half of the people in the world. So I thought it better to try and just be a bit more delicate, I guess. Yeah. It didn't feel like my part of the story to tell, out of respect for Enid and for George, I guess.
Okay.
Talking about respect for Enid, what do the ears of Enid Blyton say to the story? Is that approved? Or because the story is the translator for the German, in German for the English books, she found 2 manuscripts and kind of finished them, and they released them, which caused trouble with the ears of Enid Blyton.
Yeah.
So they were taken off the market again, being now like the ghost episodes, these 2 forgotten books. I don't know if you know about these.
I didn't know about them, but I'm going to look that up. That's fascinating.
I can give you the names real quick.
Oh, yeah, do. Yeah, absolutely.
It's Fünf Freunde auf der verbotenen Insel, which means 5 on the...
It would be Forbidden Island, but I guess there's going to be a very rough translation for the titles.
Forbidden Island. Yeah, I like it. Yeah, good title.
And 5 and the Blue Diamond.
Oh, wow. Okay. Very cool.
Yeah, and they were taken off because of the licensing.
Yeah, so Enid Blyton had a very troubled relationship with her family. So her literary rights weren't actually left to her family. They were left with her publishers, Hodder and Stoughton, which are now part of Hachette, which is a very, very big...
yeah, we know them.
Yeah, so I did not have to deal with Enid Blyton's descendants. I did have to deal with the team at Hachette, who are very protective about Enid's legacy. Her whole archive is there in their offices in London, actually. All her copies of the magazines that she wrote and edited, and her personal copies of all her books. So I've been lucky enough to be able to kind of go and have a look through that treasure trove, which is incredible. Yeah. So yeah, my editors Aliana and Felicity at Hachette know the famous 5 back to front. We have competitions because sort of who knows the books best. And they're very protective of them, and they're very quick to pull me up if I get a detail wrong. But it's not quite as difficult as having to get the approval of kind of various Blyton grandchildren. I don't know what they might be like, but I can imagine that they might look not too favorably on the idea of a new famous 5. But luckily, I think I managed to convince Hachette that I was at least as passionate about the famous 5 as they were. I had to ask a couple of times, but they eventually were kind enough to let me do it.
Are these the guys that didn't know the theme tune from the 70s?
Yes, that's right. So yeah, when I so I was in a meeting with all these wonderful publishers who are a little younger than me. I'm 52, and I went, "Wow, we're Julian, Dick, and Anne, George, and Timmy the dog," and they all looked at me like, "Have you made up your own famous 5 song?" And I was like, "No, it's from the TV show, guys." And they'd never heard of it. Yeah, so it made me feel very old.
Oh, yeah. So you don't have any contact to the descendants of Enid?
I don't. There are Blyton descendants around, I know, but I've not heard whether they're aware of the book or whether they like it or not. I hope they would. I hope they would appreciate that it's done with a great deal of love. If any Blyton grandkids or great-grandkids come out of the woodwork, I'll let you know. I'll let you know what they say.
That would be interesting for us. How difficult was it for you to kind of create the story? Because I'm going to spoil that, but it's actually 2 stories in one.
Yeah.
Which are kind of like interwoven.
It was difficult because I wanted to make sure that, the middle of the book was read like a classic Famous 5 adventure, that was there and didn't feel like it was finishing in too open-ended a way. But I also wanted to deal a little bit with what the Famous 5 would be like as grown-ups, and I guess to bring some new children into that world and really think carefully to myself about, what lessons does the Famous 5 have for kids today? That's really the little seed from which I grew this story. It's like if some modern or some more modern kids, some more up-to-date kids, if they wandered into a Famous 5 adventure, how would it change them? What would they learn from it? And I hoped they would learn a little bit about going outdoors, being adventurous, going down secret tunnels, being brave, learning to rely on each other and the bonds of friendship, learning from the original member of the Famous Five that, old people have got something to teach them as well, or older people have got something to teach them. And so I started with the feeling that I wanted to get from the book. And I wanted to have a feeling of nostalgia, and of love for these original stories, but also this sense of what the Famous Five has got to tell us now. And I guess that's why the books are still popular, because there are still things that the Famous Five can show us about getting outdoors and relying on each other and looking out for each other and being good friends and cooperating and listening to each other and having adventures. It's very important. We've got to have adventures in life, right?
Oh, yeah.
We don't get up and do them. So I guess I started with the mood, the emotions that I wanted to bring out. And then actually, once I'd done that, the plot was easier to put together because, it's a Famous Five plot, right? So you need Kieran Island, hidden treasure, boats, picnics, secret tunnels. And then that all just fell into place, which was lots of fun.
I actually enjoyed that middle part a lot.
Me too. I enjoyed writing it. Yeah.
I gotta admit, I never read a Famous Five book.
Mm-hmm.
I'm only into the audio plays and the TV series.
Right.
Which takes up a lot of time for me
Absolutely.
to prepare.
Yeah.
What got me back to the Famous Five, because I know them when I was a kid, and then I kind of switched to other series which were more for adults. There have been, I think it's 5 or 4 books written by Bruno Vincent in 2016. They came out in England. They were released in 2018 as audio plays. It's actually 4 books. It's about the Famous Five being grown-ups.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
You know these?
Yeah, so it's called, is it 5 on Brexit Island or something like that?
That's one of them,
Yeah. 5 go gluten-free.
They eat gluten-free, become, I don't know, helicopter parents. Is that a word in England?
It is, yeah.
Yes. Have fun at team building and are finishing with alcohol, or, I don't know.
What was it called? Not 5 go cold turkey, not that, but something like that, yeah. Yes, I've not read them, but I'm certainly aware of them. And the Famous Five has always been a very rich subject for parody here, anyway. Are you guys aware of the comic strip TV show?
I found that yesterday.
Right.
It was, that's total mayhem.
That's total mayhem, yeah. So the comic strip Presents, which is a British collective of fantastic comedians, who many of whom went on to become incredibly famous, made this show called Five Go Mad in Dorset from I think in 1981. And there was a phrase in that where they used to say lashings of ginger beer. So they would always say, oh, yes, we'll have a picnic. Yes, with lashings of ginger beer. And this show was so popular that when I say to people I'm writing a Famous Five book, they say, oh, will there be lashings of ginger beer? Because they think it comes from the Famous Five books or it comes from the original audio. And I have to say to them that, that's not from the Famous Five. That's from the comic strip. So, the Famous Five are kind of, because they're a little old-fashioned and it's a little twee. Do you know what that word means?
No.
Twee kind of means it's all very nice, but it's a bit silly. It's just sort of like Beatrix Potter or something would be considered sort of it's all very wholesome and lovely, but perhaps a bit too much so for some people. So it's a very easy thing to make fun of. So I thought the easiest thing in the world is to kind of parody it. And it's a very low-hanging fruit, I guess, for parody. But I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do something that felt a lot more kind of loving towards it. And I could, maybe draw attention to the fact that some of it's a little old-fashioned. But I didn't just want to poke fun. I'm sure the books are very funny. I mean, 5 on Brexit Island. It sounds like a terrifying adventure. Jeez. No thanks.
Basically, the adventure is the life they live at that moment, and their character that kind of interferes with the story.
So, I think dealing with the Famous Five as grown-ups is fun, but I've tried to do it. As you said, Moritz, we won't give away the who turns up at the end of this first book, but I want to meet some of the Famous Five when they're grown-ups and see what they're up to without making fun of them,
mentioning that meeting someone. Did you get to meet any of the actors of the series?
No, I didn't. I would love to. That would be very cool. We should have like a Comic-Con, like a panel. We might.
Like
I think we might have to do it in Germany because it sounds like the series is more popular there than it is here these days. But that would be cool. Let's make it happen. We'll track down the actors and we'll have a panel. That'll be incredible.
Feel free. We're going to be happy to co-host that.
There you go.
As the first German podcast about the famous five.
Yes, let's make it happen.
They will 100% have starred in a Doctor Who episode.
So absolutely.
We can just take them over here to a convention.
We'll find them.
I read none of them stuck with acting.
Oh, right. Oh, so we need to do a bit of...
I'm wondering why.
Wow.
What was his name? The actor of Julian, he's basically an IT manager and stuff. They kind of totally went away from acting.
Imagine that. You know when you have to go on like a corporate away day, like a meeting, and they start off and they go, tell us an interesting thing about yourself. And they'll be like, well, I was Julian in the Famous Five. And we're like, what?
Talking about the series again, do you think the characters are portrayed appropriately?
Yeah, I think because the 70s feels a long time ago now. And I guess it was. I guess it was a long time ago. I mean, thinking about it, when that series came out in the 70s, we were closer to, the Famous Five series actually being written than we are to ourselves today. So, I mean, I think when I watched it at the time, it probably felt more up to date than the books because the kids were dressed in jeans in the original Famous Five, although they've changed the book since, but the Famous Five were always wearing shorts and they felt quite contemporary to me in the 70s. But I guess time gives us a bit of context. And I think now that series feels quite true to the books because it feels almost as old as the books, I guess. They kind of merge together in my mind, Yeah, I think so. I thought Julia was very cool in that series. I'm sorry he's now an IT manager. He was we need IT, but he was a fine actor. I thought it was a good portrayal.
He shows up in the new series in the first episode of the new BBC series.
Oh, what, the actor does he? Makes a cameo?
He has a cameo.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I did some research.
Oh, come on, you're a nerd.
Wow, that is a very good bit of trivia. I love that.
I haven't yet seen that. I just took a glimpse at the new series. I didn't have too much time and didn't want to distract myself with other stories.
Yeah.
But we want to do a special about these as well. Have you seen these already?
I've seen the first one, which was on at Christmas time last year. I guess as a fan of the original TV series, it's very difficult. I thought there was some... I don't want to spoil it too much for you guys. I don't want to preempt what you're going to think when you watch it. I felt that it had a huge amount of potential. I don't think it 100% fulfilled that potential. I wanted it to be more exciting. It didn't feel quite pacey enough for me. That was my main trouble with it. There was some really well done bits. I thought the kids were excellent, and the guy who played Joffrey in Game of Thrones makes a very good bad guy in this.
I think he doesn't get away from that role.
No, I mean, but he's really kind of chewing the scenery. He acts it like very 100 miles an hour. I'll be interested to see what you think. I don't think for any of us it's going to measure up to the 70s, but it's just to see the five still on telly. Maybe it'll encourage them to make a TV show of mine, and then we're all happy.
Yeah, that we're talking about that.
Okay.
I think in the new TV series, there's been quite some changes with the characters. Talk about Aunt Fanny and George, which didn't disturb me too much. Like at the beginning, I was like, what is that? But then I realized, well, the only character that could handle so many changes would be George.
Yeah.
But I don't get what they did with Dick. Dick is like a bookworm.
That's right. Yeah.
That annoyed me a little. The rest was totally fine for me.
There are some bits that you kind of need to update a little bit, I guess. But, if it's set in a period setting, so if it's set in the 1940s, 1950s, then I think just play the characters as they're written. I mean, I feel like there's not much in the Famous Five that you need to sort of airbrush, really, or improve. So, yeah, I didn't quite... I mean, Dick in the books and in the audio plays and in the 70s he's a fun character. I liked writing Dick, and I like reading about him, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he's up to when he's grown up in my books. So I didn't really feel that there was any need to kind of make him kind of I guess, a nerdy character. And also, you don't have to be a nerd to read books, guys. I think, as I say, I like promoting literacy. And the thing I want to get away from is that books and reading and learning is just for, weird kids with glasses. It's for everybody. So yes, I think I'm on the same page with you as that.
Yeah, I mean, most of my questions are answered.
Okay.
I got two, which we can do at the end,
All right.
which can conclude that. Moritz, do you have any more questions?
Of course, I have one question. Do you think there are going to be German, Spanish, French versions of your books?
I really hope so. I think we need to start with a German translation, right? Because I feel like this is where the famous five flame is burning most brightly. Fingers crossed. And I'd love to know what other fans in Germany make of it.
Because when I read your book, I had the immediate idea to write an email to a German publisher. It's the publisher Überreuter. They do children's books.
Right.
Plus, they did The Sorcerer of Firetop Mountain.
The Hexenmeister.
And they did the German version of the fighting fantasy Rihanna Pratchett, Crystal of Storms.
Oh, okay.
So I thought that would be a match made in heaven, because the cover as well, it would fit into their program perfectly. I wrote them, hey, come on, let's do this. I'm going to translate the thingy.
Come on, Moritz, be my cheerleader.
So maybe you can ask your English publisher, hey, come on, there's a German publisher, Überreuter, let's do this.
I will talk to the rights team who have been at Bologna, and they will be at Frankfurt at the Buchmesse. And yeah, we'll keep we cross our thumbs. Yeah, that's what you do in Germany.
Yeah.
Yes.
Cross our thumbs.
Okay.
You got someone who can translate.
There you go.
Sitting there. So if you want to, we can make that happen.
Okay, perfect. I feel like the jigsaw is falling into place.
You did the audiobook. You voiced the audiobook yourself?
Yeah, I was a newsreader on the radio for a long time. So I come from an audio background. So I like to always do my audiobooks if possible. So yeah, it was fun. It was good to do.
What Dirk wants to say is, Dirk.
I'm a voice actor.
Hey,
so actually, I'm training to be. Did my first stops in a small project.
Well, I'll tell you what, Moritz, you sort out the translation deal, and then Dirk will talk about the German audiobook, and I feel like the team is ready to play.
Okay, let's go.
Yeah, that would be cool, especially when there's people who are into the material.
Absolutely, yeah, 100%. Yeah.
And before we have Dirk's final questions, I can tell you two more cool German famous five thingies.
Yes,
because
please.
Between 2015 and 18, there have been 5 movies, which are not very famous fivey, but they are great children's adventures movies. So they are very cool, but they are not very famous fivey. And there is a series of gaming books in Germany, Fünf Freunde und du, 5 Friends and You, where you have got the original books, but you can play them as like a fighting fantasy book.
Oh my goodness, that's such a good idea.
The cool thing is you always reach the end, so you always win, but you can collect points in between, and then you have got kind of a rating how adventurous you are at the end. They are so cool.
I'm glad that you get to the end in a happy there's a happy ending, because wasn't it the Lone Wolf books where you just went to a certain bit and it went, you are dead? Fighting
fantasy is much more terrible there.
Right, that's right. When you suddenly turn to that one and you hoped you kept your thumb in the previous page. You're like, no!
Yeah. I always play them with at least 7 fingers.
Oh,
in
100%.
The book. 100%. It's not cheating, guys. It's not cheating.
Absolutely. Just saving us a lot of time going through the whole beginning of the adventure again.
Okay, now you have taken my last points talking about the German movies.
Oh.
I got one at home on DVD, and I'm looking if there's an English translation, because if not, you don't have any use for that. If they have, I'm going to let you have that DVD.
Okay, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
But I don't think there are going to be synchronized versions.
I don't know, maybe
not even subtitles.
Okay. I'll have to use my very bad German, see how much I can understand.
Nice children stories.
Right.
You see where there's the connection to the famous five story-wise. Yeah, it's different because it plays in Germany at the coast.
But there are cool actors. There are famous actors, good actors. So
Yeah, German actors, which maybe
yeah,
not
good actors for German actors. Okay.
Yeah, right. Yeah. That's good.
for
Good
German
actor.
standards, pretty good actors. Yes. Looking at Amazon, I see that your books has book one, which is not on the book anywhere. So
Yeah, there must be a one here. So
Oh,
that
you're right. You know what? That's absolutely right. When the second one is out, we can add a 1 to that.
But then we've got the first one with no number that doesn't work. No.
yeah,
Right.
you cannot change the design after the first one. You got to make your mind up about
Okay.
that because we're all
locked in.
monks here. And you cannot even change the direction of the
Oh,
writing
definitely not.
on the back of the book, which is this is so annoying to put them in the shelves.
Right. Yes. Okay. I apologize.
I would have loved to have the new famous five will be back in on the last page of the book, but that's not the case.
Does it not say that in your copy?
No.
What?
Do you not have this at the end?
No.
Wait a second.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go.
Then
It's there.
The smuggler's code. Oh, codes are always good.
Always good. I've just finished writing the first draft of the second book, which is Five and the Smuggler's Code. So I don't know what it's called in Germany, but there's a story called Five Go to Smuggler's Top, where they go to a mysterious old house on a hill called Castaway Hill. And in Five and the Smuggler's Code, the new famous five return to this very mysterious town and discover that there are some unsolved
Fünf
mysteries.
Freunde auf Schmugglerjagd.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
the fourth book in
That's right.
the audio play series. It's episode 19, and in the TV, I think that's okay. In my list, I have a different one. It's episode 11.
Right.
You see how everything is mixed up in that.
Yes, indeed.
There's a problem with the German translations because they've always changed the location names and it's terrible. And they've tried to Germanize everything a bit, and they pay with mark, but it's
Deutschmark.
in Cornwall. Come on, it's terrible for the first things because when we prepare an episode, I always read the German and the English book, and
Right.
it's incredible. They should just have left it.
Yeah.
We just did an episode where they are in Cornwall and you learn about Cornish names and everything, and that's so cool. But in the German book, they just left it out.
Oh, I see. So the German books, the adventures are sort of assumed to kind of take place in Germany.
No.
No.
They just didn't put that in because I just thought, we don't know where Cornwall is. Yeah.
In the audiobooks, they don't pay in pound, they pay in Deutschmark.
Right.
Because
Okay.
for the kids, it was easier.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that makes sense. Yeah.
And also they changed the names to more
Generic names.
Okay.
in episode 7. What was episode 7? It's a family, the Penruthians.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah.
It's
That's
which
a
one was it?
very typical Cornish name. Yeah. Anything starting in pen.
I learned the sentence by pen, pollen, pen, you will know the Cornishman, and I loved it.
There you know the Cornish man. Indeed. Yes.
But
right, yeah.
Of course, that's wiped out in the German book.
Yeah, so how many parts have you planned?
So I don't think I want to write 21.
More?
I think leave that to Enid Blyton. But I think there'll be 4 of these books. I hope so.
Each featuring one of the original characters.
Each featuring one of the original characters, sort of more heavily. So we will, by the end of it, we'll, I think, as well as having the new famous 5, we will catch up with the old famous 5 together, and then I think that will be a good time to say goodbye. And it will have been a nice kind of, hopefully, a revisiting of some old friends. And, bringing some new kids into the books as well. That's what I really want to do.
Okay, but you see the problem. When you're finished, you will have your own Reichenbach Falls, and everybody writes that you have to write more books.
Yes. Well, all I can say about that, Moritz, is that that'll be a nice problem to have.
Okay. Yeah.
If the problem is that you're more popular than you want to be, then you got no problem.
Let's hope that it's going to happen.
I hope so, guys. Thank you for being so kind, and it means a lot to me that people that love the famous 5 as much as you do are being so kind about the book, because it would be very easy to sort of say, this is terrible, it doesn't need updating, and to be kind of very dismissive of it. And it really means the world that people that love these characters as much as I do are being so kind. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. And thank you for being here, because it's kind of like a privilege to have guests that spend their time for us, with us. And in that way, it's been a great honor to have you here.
And it's been fun as well.
Yeah, as well. Yeah.
The honor is all mine. Thank you so much for having me on. And it has been fun. And I'll look forward to hearing more from you guys. And I'll see you at Comic-Con for the panel show, right?
Yeah.
With the original cast.
Of course.
Yeah. We try to make that happen.
And for the German market, we will even have to invite the speakers, so the German voices, because they are even more well-known or famous than the actors. So it's going to be a great happening.
It's going to be a good panel and a very long panel.
I have so many ideas about an audio play with your new book.
I mean,
because we could use the old speakers and introduce new speakers with the kids. So that would be a big seller.
Yeah.
That would be like a guarantee for success for that audio play.
Money printing machine.
Oh.
Right. Yeah, let's wrap it up.
I didn't know you can rap.
I can't. You know that I can't.
PS5 rap. That's a whole other spin-off.
Maybe our community can arrange something like that.
But yeah, when the next book is ready, I'd love to chat to you guys again and find out what you think about it. So I'll look forward to talking again soon.
I read that it's coming out in January 26th.
Should be right. Yeah, maybe a little bit later, maybe February, March 26th. But
okay,
yeah, it's the first draft is finished, so we're getting there. There are lots of underground tunnels. Don't worry.
We're on our toes, and we're really eager to read that.
Amazing.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna start the outro music. I know it has a little Baywatch feeling in it.
David Hasselhoff of German Podcasting.
Reif für die Felseninsel ist ein Hobbyprojekt und wird produziert von Die Couchfesseln. Wir stehen weder mit Europa, der BBC oder anderen Rechteinhabern in Verbindung. Herzlichst bedanken wir uns bei Stefan Loske, der unsere großartigen Titelbilder gestaltet. In den Shownotes findest du alle Links zu unseren Social-Media-Accounts. Wenn dir diese Episode gefallen hat, freuen wir uns, wenn du uns folgst, positiv bewertest oder einen netten Kommentar hinterlässt. Redaktion und Recherche Franziska Engesser, Moritz Melem. Redaktion und Post-Production Dirk Mansbart. Intro, Trenner und Abspann Mario Wolf. Vielen Dank fürs Zuhören und bis zum nächsten Mal.